Welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast for film fans by film fans. Every episode we look at films old and new to choose what should be preserved for all time in our movie vault. With lively topics, big questions and crazy challenges to entertain us and our guests, we always look to have fun by giving you the topics worth discussing and the movies worth watching, even if there are some duds along the way. But don't just take my word for it, here's a preview of what to expect in today's episode.
I dare you to put knives out at the top. Go on. Above Agatha Christie. Go on, do it.
I'm going to, because this particular adaptation of Murder on the Orient Express was horrific. Poirot was terrible. So, yeah, I agree with you about number 3 and disagree about everything else, I think.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Are you not entertained?
I am your father.
Wait!
I'll be back.
It's not the car, it's a silly movie boy!
Well, good movies!
Hello and welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast that gives you the topics worth discussing and the movies worth watching. I'm your host, David Osger, and I am joined by my co-host. Everyone's been talking about The Crown recently, and this is our own royalty. He is Craig McDonald, everyone.
Well, it's about time you admitted it.
After the last episode, Craig, I've walked into a new world. We had the disaster, the end of the world, and, I've seen the light.
That's good. And also, it has nothing to do with my gang of militia running around.
Yeah, there's no threats. So, Craig, we've had some interesting weeks here in Wales recently, lots of lockdowns, but I thought it'd be good for a little catch up as you recently used the opportunity to watch something you'd been meaning to go through for quite a while, wasn't it? What have you been checking out?
Well, I realise I've been missing out on a lot of general series, and I've had a lot of recommendations I should go through. Things like Breaking Bad, The Wire, The Crown, lots of fantastic suggestions. I decided to ignore all of them and watch the entirety of Cobra Kai. Bear in mind, I have no affinity for the Karate Kid films. I've never seen them in full, but I just wanted to watch Cobra Kai because I just like the idea of some arsehole from the 80s deciding I'm going to teach other kids how to do really, really brutal karate. It's good fun.
Yeah, it makes sense actually because, like I said, sometimes it is interesting because you said, wasn't it, like having the protagonist, antagonist idea of it is different. It's weird.
Yeah, they've basically just taken the bully from the original Karate Kid film and just made him a down on his luck protagonist, but they still keep that edge to him so that the entire reason that he wants to teach karate is because he just doesn't like the new generation, because it's just basically, for lack of a better word, it's just too snowflakey for him, and he's just but it leads to some really interesting things. Like, he hates the idea of like online bullying and trolling because there's just no bravery to it. It's just like, if you're going to insult someone, do it to their face.
Wow. Fair play. Well, yeah, like I said, I mentioned The Crown because I've been recently watching that, and it's kind of a similar thing there where you're kind of like watching these characters that you sometimes support and sometimes don't at all, because obviously there's the aspect of like, oh, they're completely different to us, and oh, it's interesting because it's history, and then they go and like shoot a stag or something, and I'm like, oh, I don't like this. Yeah, like why? Like when they're like hunting animals and stuff, I'm like, I don't like it, stop doing that. And then they do something else which is like, admirable or commendable, and then you're like, this is so weird. You don't often get characters which are so like polarizing, especially because they are of that higher class, and you get like the Queen Mother, like, oh, we have to mix with the rabble and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, the rabble are the most of the people who watch this show. This is what's strange about it.
I just think people like being insulted, because I think whenever an insult like that comes along, they can go, that's us! Yay! We're acknowledged!
Yeah, exactly. So we'll get on to what our main topic is today anyway, which is murder mysteries. Today is 27th of November, and Rian Johnson's Knives Out came out this time last year. I know, it was a weird time, guys. There was actually this thing called cinemas, and they released films on a weekly basis, and you could go and see them in public with many people in a room. And so we're looking back on those fond memories today with one of the big surprises of last year, which was Knives Out. There was a massive throwback to this sort of oddball genre, and it was, you know, quite a big hit for what it was. They've already announced a sequel, so we're going to see, you know, Daniel Craig return. It'll be a new mystery, and it's currently streaming on Amazon Prime, so it's also been great for a lot of people this year because it's been something that they could watch during lockdown, etc. So yeah, if you haven't checked out Knives Out, do check it out. But, you know, this idea came to us from one of our previous guests. She is a good friend of the show. You might have caught her on our musical or Eurovision episodes, but today she's not talking about music. She's talking about Whodunnits. It is Chiara. Hello, Chiara.
Hi, thanks for inviting me back.
Oh, it's no problem. Well, you set us the challenge, so, you know.
I do love a good murder mystery.
Yeah. Before we go into, like, the reasons of the murder mystery, I do know, to link us still slightly to musicals, I know that in your first episode we did talk about musicals because Frozen 2 was coming out. And I know recently, I think you did watch Frozen 2, wasn't it? So the opinions of Frozen weren't too high in that episode. So now what was the opinions of Frozen 2 after watching it?
Frozen 2 compared to Frozen 1 is just so much worse. The original Frozen was okay, but like not the best thing I've ever seen. Frozen 2 is just horrific. I mean, Craig can tell you when we were watching it, it took me about 10 minutes in to go, this is unreliable narration, and then the plot made no sense. So, no.
Yeah.
I was not a fan.
So, in terms of Disney sequels, you've got other ones in mind you would prefer to have. Is it a Moana? You know, like there's some people out there who are like, I prefer Moana than Frozen, or Tangled. That's another one. Or
I think Moana is definitely kind of top of my list currently of the modern Disney. But for the sake of my childhood, I've got to say that the original Snow White is forever going to be the best Disney film, full stop.
Yeah. But then you don't want to touch that with a sequel, so, you know, they don't want to ruin that.
They'd better never try it.
Thankfully, so far, it's one of the few they have not tried in any capacity, which makes sense, given that what on earth would you do?
Yeah.
Yeah, but please don't jinx it, because now we're talking about it. You know that that's going to be the first announcement of 2021, just so that it can rival 2020 for being a terrible year.
True. So back to murder mysteries. What is it about this genre and this type of film that, you know, made you want to talk about it and bring it on the show today?
To be honest, I couldn't tell you. I just know that I absolutely love a whodunit. I have seen every single episode of Midsummer Murders, and that's been running since 1990.
Wow, that is quite an accomplishment. Every time I watch that, I'm like, this is just the same thing. So hats off.
It is. I normally remember about halfway through who did it, but they do kind of all blend into one another after a while, except my few favourite episodes. I know we're supposed to be talking about film, but those things are 2 hours each, so I think they pretty much count as films that happen to be on TV.
Yeah. And like I said, streaming is such a big thing this year. You know, a lot of people are going through binge watching and TV programs. Can you actually answer the question as to why there are so many murders in Midsummer? Have you been able to come to that conclusion yet?
I just think the perennial question is why there's always someone setting up a new business in somewhere that is famous for getting people killed. It doesn't seem a very good employee retention plan to me.
Makes sense. And what was it about Knives Out that stood out to you? Was it this year? Was the first time you had watched it, or?
So yeah, I think I watched it for the first time during lockdown, actually, because it was one of those that I kept meaning to see in the cinema but never actually got around to. Yeah. In the time where I wasn't prioritising cinemas because I didn't realise that there wasn't going to be a possibility in future. Yeah. But yeah, I love a good whodunit, and it's one of those films that should have been terrible and wasn't. Yeah,
that's a good way of putting it. And yeah, it's got a lot of the classic tropes that I'm sure we'll be talking about later. So joining us as well today, we thought who better when we're talking about, you know, murder mysteries, the theatrics of it all, is somebody who is an entertainer himself. He is an actor. It's his first time on the show. It is Paul Cornish. Hello.
Oh, thank you very much. Hello. How are we, Dave?
Very good. Obviously, Paul, we know each other from the days of student short films. I thought it was quite funny, actually, when I was thinking back on this. Even though, obviously, you're a man of many talents, you know, play different roles, been in adverts, film, etc. There was kind of a theme of, like, death with the films that I mainly knew you from, because you were in The Waiting Room, in which you play a man who's died, and then you also played a priest in one of the other short films of that year, which is obviously then, funerals, churches, all that kind of stuff.
I was wondering where you were going with that. Then I thought you were going to say all the films I've been in have died.
No. Well, I don't know. You could have said that afterwards. I don't know.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of acting, as you say, and I've done a lot of stuff. It's all been performance-based, a lot of it variety on the stage. I've been a professional magician, as you know, for quite a while. Done bits and bobs of acting work, and more recently, of course, what with all this this pandemic and everything that's going on, all the work's dried up. So it's given me a chance to do something I've been meaning to do for a long time, and that is try and go down the streaming route. When lockdown actually occurred and I found myself stuck in the house, I'd taken immunosuppressant drugs, so I was one of those that was not allowed to go out at all, essentially. So I was a prisoner in my own house for about 5 or 6 months or so. But what I realised at that point was all my entertainment work had actually dried up. But I had the perfect skill set to be able to try and go online. The light came on, so to speak, when I was watching YouTube, and I saw this guy was doing a quiz, and he had 170,000 people viewing this quiz. And I looked at the quality of what he was actually presenting, and I thought, oh, right, okay, I think I could do a little bit better than that. He started the show by going, hi, hello, how are you? Welcome to the... Oh, we've got to go out and clap for the nurses. And he went away for 15 minutes, leaving the screen completely blank. It came back and went, oh, right, there you go. Then he went through the quiz, and I thought it was... not my cup of tea, shall we say. And I thought I could give this a bash if he's getting 170,000 views. So I put... a quiz together called Squiz, and the reason it was called Squiz was the S was for scratch card, because I took the concept. I had this concept of, well, why don't I can't give away real money, but I'd like to give something away on the quiz to try and make it a little bit different from all the other quizzes that are out there. So I thought, well, why don't I do online interactive quiz, but the winner at various points during the course of the competition will actually win a scratch card. And we did about 42 episodes altogether, and I've never been a marketer. I've been a performer. I've never been a marketer. We tried Facebook advertising and everything, but it wasn't really pulling in anybody. So it got to the stage whereby we were still enjoying doing it. There were two reasons I started in the beginning. First of all was to actually see if I could make the thing work. And secondly was to use it as a practical vehicle to gel all the skills together, to learn the art of presenting and streaming and everything. So I thought at the end of the day, even if the quiz doesn't work, I'll have practice in all of this stuff, and I can go out and offer my services to other people to present various bits and bobs that they might want presented to advertise their business. So
yeah, and it's something, like you said, you can look back on hopefully in 2020 and sort of say like, oh well, that's what we had to do because of this lockdown, etc. And I'm sure a lot of other entertainers and people who did streaming will look back on that as well. Like I said, I know we've had people previously on, etc., people who do music or who do like drag, etc. And like you said, once I'm sure they can get back into the live performance area, then they will go straight back to there as soon as they can. So yeah, we look forward to chatting with you as well, Paul, about murder mysteries today. We've got a few different films that we're talking about. I know Craig was just, looking in shame as you were talking about that guy who walked out, for 15 minutes clapping the nurses. As a fellow quiz master, he would never think of doing that.
I just think, why on earth would you not have yourself on screen as much as possible? Because, the worst thing would be somebody clicks onto your stream, there's no one there, and they go, okay, bye.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because to be clear, obviously the clapping thing is fun, but you would want to show everyone that. You would want to show your street. You wouldn't be like, right, I'm going to go clap now, guys, but you can't hear it. Like, I'm just going to go and you just watch my living room.
Or hell, just start your stream at like 8:10. Like,
yeah. It'll be a fun episode today anyway, guys. Thank you for joining us. And it's obviously in celebration of, Knives Out coming out this time last year. But as everyone knows at home, we love a good challenge. We love to go through different genres, and murder mysteries definitely are like a very specific genre. As Chiara said, there's a lot of television murder mysteries, especially, even with, you got Agatha Christie is probably one of the biggest ones, and she gets a lot of television specials, etc. But, they do creep into, film now and again. You've had like, the 70s had like a lot of different plays with, the genre. You had like, the Pink Panther films, etc. The 90s, you had films, like, Clue, and then, leading up to Gosford Park in the beginning of the 2000s. And recently it's had, somewhat of a resurgence. It's still a niche sort of market, but, there's those two films that have prevailed, which is Knives Out, and in 2017 we had Murder on the Orient Express, which was brought to us by Kenneth Branagh, and that meant that we were getting a sequel, which was Death on the Nile, which was again meant to come out this year, but a certain beer-based beverage, got in the way. So, we're going to be talking about those different films today. We're going to be checking out Knives Out, Murder on the Orient Express, Clue, and Gosford Park to give us a good scope of the different tropes and, themes of these movies. And if you haven't checked them out before, go check them out. And I'm sure, like I said, here, guys, I'm interested what you think. They're whodunits, but do we talk about who done it? So I think before we even talk about any of the films, do we say now there's going to be spoilers, or are we gonna keep the mystery, alive?
If there's anyone on Earth who doesn't already know the ending to Murder on the Orient Express, they should not be listening to a podcast about murder mysteries.
Very true, very true. We'll take it on a case-by-case basis then. But Murder on the Orient Express, definitely you should know that one.
I also think with Clue, it is very hard to be able to discuss who did it, given the fact the film itself cannot decide.
Yeah, exactly. And if you went to see it when it originally came out, then you might have a different idea to the person who some other person who went to go watch it as well. So, but we'll start off with the film that triggered this conversation, which is Knives Out. It is a detective investigating the death of a eccentric author, and he's got a very big family, and it's the typical tropes of they've all got their different reasons that they could have potentially committed this crime, and the more it unravels, the more it becomes a very elaborate story. It's directed by Rian Johnson and stars Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, and Ana de Armas. So, general thoughts of it, as what we all think. Craig, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I love this film. I think, first of all, just as an homage to murder mysteries in and of itself, just trying to build up the idea of these incredibly charismatic but just unlikable people, making you believe any one of them could have done it. I just think that they all did a fantastic job. I think that the casting is especially good, but I also just like the fact that it tried to. I think the way it tried to subvert people's expectations about the film by, I don't think that this is a spoiler technically, but not in the way that you'd expect. The film basically shows you who the killer is and how circumstances actually occur pretty much just before the halfway mark. So it basically transforms from a traditional murder mystery into, will the killer get away with this crime? And then what are the overall outcomes of this, especially when things like the will reading happen. So it just has a really different vibe, to the point that you're actively at times potentially rooting against the investigation team as it stands. So for me, it really stands out on that. I also just think Daniel Craig does a great job at leading it, even though his initial lines in the southern drawl are a little bit awkward and off-putting, but I think the way they introduce him just sitting in the shadow is just great, and he just does a brilliant job at filling in the gap in this massive donut hole that we have in the story. Yeah, I can't say enough about this film. I mean, obviously it has some minor issues here or there, but I just had a great time with it. Chiara, what did you think?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, I always love a good murder mystery, and like you say, it has a few of the tropes of a murder mystery that it just does them really well. And to be honest, I was not expecting to like this film because I thought, oh God, Hollywood is trying to do the most British of film genres. And I thought it was going to go horribly wrong. And yet it didn't. And it came out really well. And clearly just everyone was having such a good time having it up. Like Daniel Craig with the insane southern accent of talking about donut holes within donut holes. He was just clearly having the time of his life and really relishing the character. And the same with Chris Evans, you know, being pretty much the opposite of Captain America. I just thought the casting worked out so well.
Yeah. Oh, I've got to talk about Chris Evans. I think he probably had... I know that David and I really love this scene, but it's basically during the will reading, because he's essentially like the prodigal son who basically... Well, I don't think that's the right term, but he basically is the son that just returns out of nowhere. He's meant to be cut out of the will, and all the family are going, this is the best thing that'll ever happen to you. The will happens, they're all cut out, they're all going mad, and he's just there driving around in circles on the lawn. This is the best thing that's ever happened to you! Just absolutely trolling it up. It's just fantastic.
It's a classic example of just like when a line is dropped earlier in the script and then it just like comes back in such a beautiful way. I just love it when stories are able to do that.
Yeah. And he also, I was watching some behind the scenes footage, and it was also Chris Evans' idea to change, you know, the scene where they're sitting all together and they basically say, this is the best thing that happened to you. And he basically turns and says, eat shit. He was the one who suggested it had to be those exact words. And I'm so glad of it, because I just love Michael Shannon's response was, I will never eat that amount of shit. Yeah. How did you think this film went for you, Paul?
Right. Well, I'm going to go the other side of the fence completely on this, because it didn't sit right for me. And I think a lot of the time, it's to do with your expectations. And I went in expecting it to be a murder mystery. It was advertised as a whodunit. And I thought it was going to be more of a classic sort of Agatha Christie type of film. And it became very apparent from the word go that, as you said, Chiara, they were hamming this up big style. Not to the extent that it was a comedy, but over the threshold of being, you know, this is normal. So I didn't know where to put it in my little head. I thought, is this a comedy? Isn't it a comedy? As you say, Daniel Craig's southern drawl really it just didn't sit right with me. I thought, no, don't get me wrong, all of the actors, fantastic. They were obviously directed in whatever direction that they were told to go, because it was all highly exaggerated, almost a cartoon. It wasn't what I expected. So as a result, I came out going, no, it didn't make me laugh, but it wasn't intellectual enough or gained my interest enough for it to be a proper whodunit piece. And also, it seemed when they actually revealed who had done it and why, it seemed a massive jump of assumptions. You know, for me, to have a good whodunit film, all the points and all the clues have got to be there. And I like the satisfaction at the end of going, oh, yeah, of course, that and that. Why didn't I put that and that together to make that? Yeah, I understand now. And you feel fulfilled with it. With this, I just didn't. It was, yeah, all the facts of the film fitted into it, but he might as well have said, yes, but a green alien came down on Thursday wearing pink shoes and he shot him. And because so and so, and it seemed as it wasn't logical to me at all. I wouldn't recommend it as a film of its genre, but obviously you two quite do. What did you think of it, Dave?
Yeah, I really loved it when I saw it in the cinema. As to like rewatchability, I think when I did watch it back, I was just like, I'm not sure if it holds quite the same impact when you first see it, because obviously you know everything that happens, but I suppose that would be the case with any murder mystery. But there wasn't the element of like, oh, I didn't notice that last time, or, you know, watching how it unravels kind of thing, because it's more the, oh, wow, you know, it actually, you know, that wasn't the case. And now it's become this kind of film, whereas, again, you're not going to get that on the second time round. I think the main enjoyment is, again, the characters, the theatrics of it all. And I think that's what Rian Johnson really loves about it, is that he wants to play up the larger than life aspects of it. So I can understand where you're coming from. It wasn't so much that I found it like a mess. I do still love it, because there's loads of stuff I appreciate about it, but I can understand where you're coming from, because I think like Craig, I have just some minor stuff with it, but on the whole, I think it's a really great film and one of the best of last year. Also, I think that just quickly, I think Benoit Blanc is more of a, like you said, he goes off presumptions rather than actual specifics, and I think that's Rian Johnson wanting to do like we're going to talk about with Murder on the Orient Express, is that idea of he gets invested in the person and they wouldn't do this, and that's why they did this, because that's what kind of person they are. He's going off more that kind of vibe rather than I'm the man of detail and I'm the man who looks at specifics. And again, it happens quite clearly again, I suppose, in Gosford Park later on, doesn't it, when the detective is just ignoring like physical evidence, etc. But I do love it. But yeah, I can understand the flaws people have with it.
I do have to question though the kind of the assumption that it's not a traditional whodunit, but it does still have the same tropes as kind of the old murder mysteries, and you do have situations where even the queen of the whodunit, Agatha Christie, there's that play. I think it's Verdict. One of the Agatha Christie plays has the murder on stage as the first scene, and then the rest of the play is effectively everyone else figuring out who did it, but obviously the audience already knows because they've just watched the murder. So I do think it is part of that kind of historic view of the whole murder mystery genre that you do have occasionally. It's not a straightforward detective lays it all out at the end.
Yeah, because even Columbo, is it Columbo that bases the entire premise on every episode? They show you the murder and who it is at the beginning, and then it's just watching to basically see exactly how it's uncovered. So
yeah, no, I love Columbo. I do like Columbo.
But then I think probably what happened, I think then the difference in that situation is it never advertised itself as a just try and work out the murder for yourself sort of thing. So I get that. I can understand that, like the way in which a film is often advertised to someone can lead them so much down a path that when that path is then essentially roadblocked, it changes the way you view the rest of the film. I think a lot of it comes down to then how well you adapt to that. I think for me, given the I was just happy to have something. I mean, I don't try and expect anything about films anymore. I'm just happy that we got something that it gave me a feeling I never thought I would expect, which is just potentially rooting for a murderer. I'm just like, okay, fair. Also, just with regards to the exaggeration, I think that comes part and parcel with a film that does try and go, I'm massively going to subvert the murder mystery tropes in this way, and just take the type of characters we're talking about and just make them so unlikable, which I think in order for the middle to work, I think that needed to happen, because otherwise there's just nobody in the film you can invest in.
For me, it sort of fitted in. If we look at all the films that we're going to discuss, if you look at as Clue on one side of the fence, right, the complete comedy, and you look at, say, Murder on the Orient Express on the other side, right, which is your complete traditional, this was probably slam bang in the middle, yeah? And I felt it didn't know whether it was, personally, I didn't know whether it was one thing or another, and I don't think that I never did get happy with Daniel Craig's accent. I just to me, I think Dick Van Dyke did a better job on Mary Poppins.
Oh, wow.
But I'm not saying it was bad. I don't know whether it was just that I couldn't see him doing that accent because I've seen him in so many other things. Yeah. I don't know what that accent should have been like. It could have been spot on, but it did seem very caricatured to me.
But I think, again, that to me, I got that. I think the movie almost does it a bit too late in some respects, because like you said, you go through the entire film like, are they going for this? Are they trying to do that? And by the end, when one of the characters calls him Foghorn Leghorn, I'm like, you definitely are going for like the intentional cliche vibes here. If you've called him Foghorn Leghorn, which everyone is thinking throughout the entire film, then I think that there is that element of like playfulness and like you said, I don't think it's like a full comedy like Clue is, but I think it's more like that element of satire. It's got like a satirical undertone with it, and the fact that like Poirot as well, who's quite a larger than life character, that Benoit Blanc is this sort of larger than life character almost as well, like a bit like Inspector Clouseau, that he's kind of just like stumbling his way across the entire thing, and then at the end actually manages to piece it all together somehow. So I think it's the theatrics of that, and I've got to be honest, I'm excited to see Benoit Blanc solve another mystery in the next one, because it's how, say, I don't know where they're going to set the film, I don't know, New York or something like that, or they're in another part of the world, or even Australia or something. I am looking forward to then these people reacting to this very strange southern character. There is an intriguing element there, I think, because it's so jarring, because it is so bizarre.
It does lead to one of my favorite lines of the film, which is CSI KFC.
There's a Doctor Who episode where they have Agatha Christie in it, and again they go down the line of, oh, wouldn't it be fun if Agatha Christie was involved in one of her own like murder mysteries kind of thing. So it's the idea of the author being a part of their own mystery, which again, I know Benoit Blanc isn't an author or anything like that, but it's that idea of the elaborate storyteller is like the heart of it kind of thing.
Well, that actually was true, wasn't it? The Doctor Who episode that they based Agatha Christie on, there were 2 or 3 days in her life that she went missing, wasn't there?
Yeah. There was sightings of a giant wasp in England.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I think that might have been a little bit of theatrical license, but...
Doctor Who exaggerating things about the historical past?
No. So we were talking about, like I said, the theatrics, and as Paul pointed out, there's the two sides of the track, which like on a track you need to have a train. So this chat about Murder on the Orient Express, there are many different versions of this, which is worth pointing out, but I thought it was worth talking about the 2017 one, because I know there are a lot of people who have problems with it, but I thought it was interesting that it was successful enough to make Death on the Nile, and they even at the end have the whole, it's like, it reminded me of like Batman, like the Joker card. Oh, there's a new villain on town. They give him like the next case right at the end. There's a problem on the Nile, and it's like what? But I kind of did love it, kind of thing. It's kind of like what somebody said before. I think I've told you this before, wasn't it, Craig? When you watch, which film is it? When at the end you get the tease as to the Watergate scandal.
The Post.
Yeah, so it was as if like that was like, the historical version of an end credit scene in which lots of like people who know their American history are like, ooh. So this was directed by Kenneth Branagh, also stars Kenneth Branagh, and then like the other films, I think as well, this is worth mentioning that there's always this all-star cast. I think interesting to know which one has the best all-star cast, because Gosford Park definitely has quite a lot of like British gems in it, but this one tries its best as well. You've got Tom Bateman, you've got Penelope Cruz, Willem Dafoe, Judi Dench, Johnny Depp, Josh Gad, Derek Jacobi, who we've also seen in another film, Leslie Odom Jr., Michelle Pfeiffer, Daisy Ridley, Olivia Colman. So, plenty of, well-known actors here. And like I said, obviously a very well-known story. So, Chiara, what was your thoughts on, have you seen other versions of it many times before? I assume so, from television.
Yeah,
possibly?
I've seen a couple of versions, and obviously I've read the book, because you can't love a murder mystery without having read Murder on the Orient Express. So I don't think that's a possibility. I would say I love the story because I love Murder on the Orient Express. I hate Kenneth Branagh as Poirot. He's just awful. And it's not just because David Suchet has played him so well for so long on TV that it's really hard to see the kind of anyone else in the role. But it's also just the way that he plays Poirot is kind of, it's the caricature of what you think Poirot is if you've not read the books, like the horrific, huge fake moustache and the borderline OCD tendencies. Whereas when you get into it, like that's not actually what the character is, and kind of it's taking the mannerisms and exaggerating them so much that they come out the other side and you lose all the personality, which is what makes the stories good. But I mean, it's still a nice whodunit. It's just Poirot just spoils it for me. He's so bad. I normally like Kenneth Branagh. It's just so horrifically bad a performance of being Poirot that I can't get over it.
It's also very chauvinistic, I think, as well. Sometimes you can have like directors in their own projects or writers, and sometimes it can work. It depends on the tone, but I don't think Kenneth Branagh is sometimes it works, but I don't think he's enough of a, I don't know, I'm trying to think of another good example, but, you know, he's not enough of a stylistic or performance-based actor to really warrant it. I think that was very evident, you know, this year in Tenet, in which, you know, everyone was like, you know, talking about his dodgy Russian accent. You know, he's not a good enough actor to sort of justify, like, well, I need to be the leading role, especially when it is someone like Poirot, who could be played by a lot better actor. And yeah, like I said, it does seem like he was just like, well, we've had that ridiculous moustache, let's go like 10 times more ridiculous moustache, and it is a crazy moustache. And yeah, to me this is a lot more style than substance. Like, it looks like a very pretty film, it looks very nice, you know, it's all the stuff on the train, and it's very nice to see all these actors and performers, etc. But it does come across as one of those sort of remakes, which is like, let's get all these big names to do this film. But I did think Death on the Nile from the trailers, that actually looked better. I thought that looked pretty promising, because you had, again, maybe because I suppose the book it's based on is not as famous as on the Orient Express. But I don't know, you had like Gal Gadot, I think, is in it, etc. It just seemed like it was a bit more substance to it, rather than just like, oh, we're doing murder on the Orient Express, you know. And like you said, it's, you know, that film is very much based on him, like, you know, with his breakfast and his eggs and all that kind of stuff. And
that was just so appalling. That opening scene made me hate it already from the beginning, because the Poirot that I know would not be berating poor waitstaff because, like, eggs are different sizes. Yeah. This is not a thing. That's not part of the character. That's just being a word that I'm probably not allowed to say because we were told not to swear. Yeah, it just ruined the whole film, and you just can't get over the central character being so wrong. Yeah.
Is there anything else you think that's like detrimental to it as a murder mystery, or like, do you think it's still successful as a murder mystery but just maybe not successful as a whole, as a film or as an adaptation?
I mean, I think the thing is, it's Murder on the Orient Express, right? It's the perfect murder mystery, but everyone always knows who did it. It's like we said at the beginning, you can't not know the ending to that. It's one of those weird things because it's almost a trope in itself. I can't think of any other murder mystery where the answer is everyone did it, and yet somehow it's a cliche just from that one story being so good and so iconic. So
yeah.
As much as I enjoy murder mysteries, I'm not sure how many times you can really remake that one without treading old ground.
Yeah. What did you think, Paul?
Right, yeah. Here we go. I swear I'm not going opposite. Yes, on purpose. All right. I think this is a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier on, and that is expectation. Now, I haven't really read any Agatha Christie books. I've occasionally seen snippets of David Suchet's Poirot. So I didn't go into this with any view at all whatsoever. I thought Kenneth Branagh was all right as Poirot. So I can see. Oh, yeah, put that shovel down, right? I thought he was okay. I can understand how you thought he was a bit perhaps cliche, but if you were to compare, or if I was to compare, in my opinion, Kenneth Branagh's Poirot with Daniel Craig's character in Knives Out, I would say Poirot was far more believable, even though they are both, to a certain extent, a caricature. And I enjoyed this. And out of the 4 that we had to watch, I had to watch, it sounds like a school assignment, you have to watch it. Out of the 4 that I watched, I personally enjoyed this more than the others, because you knew where you stood right from the very beginning. It was a traditional murder mystery. It was filmed, I thought, very, very well indeed. Some of the camera angles were a bit, questionable. But I've never read any Agatha Christie, but I did realise, I did want to know why, and you might be able to tell me this, all right? Murder mystery, Hercule Poirot, the greatest detective in the world, about, and this is a script, a plot point, obviously, about halfway through, he realises that everybody on that train has a link to the character that has died. All right? Now, there are 12 characters, there are 12 stab wounds. At that point, right, I wouldn't have, even me with a relatively insufficient intelligence, would have gone, yeah, this is a bit more of a coincidence here. I know what's happened. And yet he did go down the route. Yeah, it could have been so. It could have been so and so. So, but that was minor, really. But why didn't he do that? Why didn't he at that point? Go on.
In the book, he only reveals it at the end. Like, it's just purely because they wanted to keep the film going on, right? I think because in the book we only find out right at the end that he's done it, and there's none of that melodrama of, are they really killers? Will they kill him with the gun and that kind of thing? So purely add melodrama.
In the book, you don't learn that everybody's got links to that second crime until right at the very end.
Yeah, pretty much.
Ah, right. Well, that would make a lot more sense, because as soon as you realise that there's 12 stab wounds and that everybody on the thing had exactly the same motive, once that is revealed halfway through the film, then you start to go, well, hold on, why is he dithering here? I must say, I did like the recreation of Da Vinci's Last Supper at the end when they're all sitting in the tunnel.
that was odd.
That was just pure additional drama for no reason whatsoever, except for Kenneth Branagh to have an excuse to stride around.
Yeah, it came across as such a theatre moment, didn't it? Like, oh, we're gonna have this nice set piece where they're all sat in the sunlight, and I was just like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
But, yeah, apparently I just saw as well that it was one of the few films to be filmed in 65mm cameras. So that's a big reason, I suppose, it looks so good. And you get a lot of those, crane shots, don't you, over the train, etc., showing what's happening, etc. But yeah, I think like Paul said, is sometimes it tries to throw you for a loop a bit more, but then in some ways confuses you more, because you're like, well, was it multiple, are they going for the aspect of, it was half of them, or, that kind of thing, so it is strange in that aspect.
Out of all the four films, I probably felt a little bit more satisfied with this, perhaps just because I felt a little bit more cultured having watched an Agatha Christie piece.
Yeah.
But it did have that, it had that opulence about it, it had that grandeur about it, it had that old-fashioned feel to it, No, I'll have to see. I haven't seen any of the others, so yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the big recommended ones is, and again, because there's somebody that me and Craig watch a lot, called Just Right, and he does a video essay about Knives Out, and he talks about some of the influences there, and he talks about how there's often this trope of having satire and being self-referential, and especially in the Murder on the Orient Express he uses, I assume it's this one, is in 1974, which is played by Albert Finney. He says that he very much goes for the larger than life sort of aspects of the character. So yeah, I think that it's hard to hold the suspense, especially if you've seen many of the adaptations before, especially when they go in through each of the people on the train. But yet, I think to me it just was too sort of just, it was a 3-star. It was okay, it was fine, it was good, but it was just nothing spectacular. But at the end of the day, with the source material and how many adaptations, is there any other way to go with it, really? But that's the modern ones we've had. Some of the older films, going back. So Clue.
Okay, where do I begin? So This is the out-and-out comedy of the bunch. Obviously, they're also massively basing this film off of the board game that we know as Cluedo, but the Americans refer to it wrongly. So obviously, you have all of the cast of characters that we're used to from the board game, having been given those aliases because they all have secret lives that are being blackmailed and threatening. And there's the threat of reveal until somebody is able to kill Mr. Body. Yes, that is actually his name, Mr. Body. And again, I think for the time as well, this has like a fantastic group of like just out there actors. You have Tim Curry and Christopher Lloyd in the same cast, and you were expecting things not to go like out there. So yeah, I've got to say I do love this film just because of how absolutely manic they make it. You literally get to the point where like Tim Curry as like the butler, I think his name is like
Podmore, isn't there something? Is it Podmore?
I thought it began with W. It's like Wadsworth or something.
Oh yes, it is. Yeah, you are right. Yeah.
The fact that he's literally taking everyone through the steps of what happened, and he's just running all over these rooms. But he's doing such an enthusiastic run, and it's just there like, and then they went to the kitchen. It's just like, what's going on? But obviously the thing that makes the film most confusing as well is the fact that there are several different endings. So there are loads of stories about how when this film was released, they attached these different endings to different versions that were sent all over the place. So people were shown different versions. And it's only been like in later years if people compiled those endings together. I'm still trying to work out in my head which I think is the most realistic, but I know which one is my favorite. So yeah, Paul, what did you think of Clue?
Again, Clue made no it didn't disguise itself in any way. From the word go, it says it's a comedy. So I knew what I was coming into. I like things with labels. So when I went in there, I knew it was going to be a comedy. I didn't find it very funny, mind you. But yeah, I knew it was going to be zany. It was going to be bonkers. Did I like it? I like the fact that it was an hour and a half, which is quite good. It kept me interested. I didn't turn it off. Yeah, I think I did in a funny type of way. It was really, I was intrigued as to how they were going to take this board game, which it obviously was, and turn it into a film and how they were going to twist it. And it was interesting how they incorporated the lead pipe and everything in boxes of gifts that they gave to people, and that they were all at a party and they were given these fictitious names. So yeah, I did quite like it, If I was to rate probably the four of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, I would probably say this was it was the third from the. Yeah, it was all right. It was okay.
Well, he didn't turn it off, so it puts it like, we'll have a level, like a scale soon. So like Hubie Halloween and 2012, the disaster film, like they turned them off. And then Paul's there with like, he didn't turn it off. So we'll soon have a list of films that people turned off, didn't quite turn off, wanted to keep on.
we should give it a percentage, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
To sort of, if we'd recommend like a number of thumbs up. Forget Rotten Tomatoes. We can call it overripe oranges or something. And
Roger Ebert actually, I think, argued once that one of the best rating systems was like the sit-in man, I think it's called, and it's just basically like a person like a theatre chair, asleep, a bit awake, like cheering, and that was like the best rating system to use for a film. I was like, yeah, that's a good way of putting it, actually.
Keep it simple, back to basics.
Yeah.
Until you get the people who get out of their chairs and walk out, in which case it sort of subverts the scale a bit.
Or it shows like somebody there like cheering for like a film like Grave of the Fireflies or something,
I will say that there are lines in this film that I unexpectedly laughed at. The slapstick was a bit too stupid for me at times, but what did you think of this, Chiara?
I think for the first time in this podcast recording, I'm actually going to agree with Paul. that I would probably put it third on the list. I suspect we put the first, second, and fourth as very different films. But my problem with Clue is I'd never seen it before I was asked to watch it for this podcast. And it's not really a murder mystery. It's a series of one-liners, very threadbare, held together by something pretending to be based on a board game. So, like, I agree with Craig, like, some of the one-liners are funny, and I laughed at a few of them, but didn't really think it was a particularly good murder mystery. And some of it, I mean, I understand what you're saying, Paul, that it was quite clever how they drew in all the weapons from the board game and that kind of thing. But to me, that just felt so contrived to say, oh, look, we're making a film of a board game. I didn't think it made for a particularly good film overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that stops it from truly being a murder mystery is the fact that there are just multiple endings, right? So if one of the things you enjoy about the genre is actually watching the film and trying to work out who is actually the murderer throughout, you can't really do it, because when you watch the version that has all of the endings crammed together with, but what if this happened and this is what really happened, like, you are just a bit betrayed. And although I am vindicated that the final ending, which, spoiler, is my favorite of the three, just because it is the dumbest ending, but it's also the one I sort of predicted. And it also has probably my favorite line ever to finish a film. Like, literally, so the only spoiler I'll give is so basically these characters are being blackmailed because they have a secret. One of the secrets for one of the characters is just that he's gay. And back in those times, it would basically cost him his job. And in the final ending, it turns out he's an agent for the FBI trying to track down the killer. And then they basically hand over the killer, and he just turns the camera and goes, "I'm going to go home and sleep with my wife." And then it just ends. And I'm like, I just cried with laughter. I was like,
I tell you
wow.
I tell you something else I absolutely loved, and I don't often laugh at films. I don't find comedy films, especially American comedy films, very funny at all. But it did take me back to the last film that I found funny, which was Airplane, which shows you how long ago that was, when the singing telegram came to the door. No.
Yep.
She just opened the door and she went, "Hello, I'm your singing bang, shot dead." Oh,
Just because it also came after a string of murders of characters we were introduced to. So it literally was just like, sing a telegram, just down.
It was because it was such a throwaway thing that it was brilliant.
It is interesting as well how Chiara said, like I said, it's not really a whodunit, but it does always come up in these lists of like best murder mysteries. Like, you know, I don't know how good we can say these are as film critics, but, you know, you get Good Housekeeping, which is like a famous magazine, and they put that as like their number one whodunit. But then, you know, Google, IMDb, Good Housekeeping, they put a lot of weird films into what they categorize as murder mysteries or whodunits. So, you know, you have like Gone Girl and you think, okay, maybe, but then you got LA Confidential, you got Scream and like Memento, and I'm like, really? You know, it's they're thrillers, but, you know, I'm not sure if that then, you know, means that it's, you know, they even put like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Girl with Dragon Tattoo, you know, it's...
What is the difference between a whodunit and a murder mystery? Because I think one of the greatest sort of whodunits, but it's not a traditional sort of whodunit murder mystery Agatha Christie thing, is Usual Suspects, you know? And all the way through Usual Suspects, for me, it's like, did he do it? Did he do it? Did he? Yeah, you haven't got the policeman detective. But at the end, it turns it all right, and it's a really satisfying film. I think Usual Suspects is great.
To me, I suppose it's the difference when it's like a detective, you know, like I said, with Sherlock Holmes. I don't think, because that's more of an investigative thing. I don't see that as you know, I suppose it is technically a whodunit, but it's just that element of, I don't know, to me, I just think of like, you know, the cast of characters, the person investigating, there's been some sort, like Midsummer, you know, there's been a murder and all this kind of stuff. But when it's something like there's a crime being committed and somebody's died as a part of it, or they hire these police to find, you know, so like another one that they mentioned, like The Nice Guys, again, that, you know, it's, I guess in some ways, yeah, it does start off with, you know, there's a mysterious death at the beginning and everything like that, but then it carries so many tropes of like the buddy cop crime genre that, I don't think that quite fits it. So yeah, I think to me, like a murder mystery or like whodunit is like the more typical Cluedo, like, setup, whereas like
in an old-fashioned
ones,
house, round a drawing room, proper English butler.
Whereas like other ones, like I said, they come more into the crime, thriller, detective sort of genre.
I was just going to say, for me, I think one of the differences, murder mysteries, they tend to just try and like narrow down those options for you. Like at the beginning, it just have all the suspects together, so you get to learn about them and try and gain the characteristics to be able to discover it. With like the sort of crime fillers, I think that they're often willing to like bring in those characters later on and then try and introduce red herrings in that way. So you don't really get the same sort of character study aspect to it, which I think is probably where I draw the line. But like, what would you say, Chiara?
I don't know. I have to admit, when I got the list of films for this session, I was quite surprised there wasn't a Sherlock Holmes one on there, because I think that's probably where, for me, there is that line between, straight crime drama and whodunit, and Sherlock Holmes probably sits almost exactly on that line, in that some of them are fairly whodunity and some of them are just, police drama, tied up in 18th century clothes.
Well, like I said, we'll go to our last film now, which is Gosford Park. And again, this is, like we've referenced there, the films that we chose all tend to be the cast of characters, a family, which, who is it out of the family, or this posh people, there's a certain detective. This one, again, to be honest, I never really heard of this before Chiara had mentioned it. It's directed by Robert Altman. Again, massive cast. I'll try and list off some if I can. Maggie Smith, Michael Gambon, Kristen Scott Thomas, Camilla Rutherford, Charles Dance, Geraldine Somerville, Tom Hollander, Natasha Reitman, Jeremy Northam, Bob Balaban, James Wilby, Claudie Blakely, Lawrence Fox, Trent Ford, Ryan Philippe. There's so many like different British actors in here. Some that you might recognize from soaps. Dame Helen Mirren is in this. Stephen Fry, Derek Jacobi, as we mentioned before. So it's a smorgasbord of British talent. And this is also, set in like an English hunting club. You've got an American film producer, director who's there. And there's a murder that happens, but this one is a lot different. That it, like you said before, where you were talking about that play that starts with the murder. This very much sets it up for a very long time, and it isn't really until maybe over halfway that it actually happens. So, what is it about this one you wanted to specifically mention, Chiara?
I mean, to be honest, this film came on the list for me for purely nostalgia purposes, because I hadn't seen it in about 15 years. So thank you to the podcast for giving me the opportunity to rewatch what was one of my favourite films as about a 10, 12-year-old, which I had, to be honest, completely forgotten the detail. I just remember really, really loving it. But it's directed by Julian Fellowes, and you can tell because effectively it's a 2-hour episode of Downton Abbey that happens to have a murder in it. But for me, it has a lot of the elements of that murder mystery that I do really enjoy. So things like we've discussed already about getting to know the characters, and kind of everyone has a slightly different motive to want to kill the person who gets killed, and then kind of slightly turning the trope on its head as well, in the fact that he's actually been murdered twice, which I think is as much of a spoiler without actually spoiling. And those kind of things. And then the trope with kind of the detective who can't even manage to say his own name because everyone's just ignoring him. And it's got those kind of funny moments built into what is also just a really good period drama. So I really enjoy it.
Yeah, there's so many characters, like you said, and it has that element of the upstairs, downstairs dynamic as well, doesn't it? So that's a big part of the period. Paul, had you seen this one before? Was this first time watch, or was this a revisit for you as well?
You don't remember Upstairs, Downstairs, do you? Get
They had a-
away with
they
you.
had- they had
You're
a
not
remake-
that old.
They had a remake, I think, didn't they, a few years ago? So that's why I knew it.
Yeah, no, my great-grandmother did tell me about that programme, I think, somewhere along the line. But yeah. What did I think of it? Well, when I was actually researching it, I saw online on various different sources that this was originally set up as a film to introduce Downton Abbey. Now, I don't know how true that is, but there were various it was covered in various different places, and then they decided to go to split them up separately. And yeah, I agree with everything that you said. It is like an episode of Downton Abbey. Not that I've seen Downton Abbey. It's very, very grand, and it's very, very nostalgic, and it's great. But as you said, the murder doesn't actually occur till about 3/4 of the way through the murder mystery. The biggest mystery to me about the entire thing was, what is the detective doing there? He doesn't do anything. He just comes in and he goes, yes, no, don't do that. I'll tell you what I think later. I'm just going back to the office. And off he goes. And he doesn't actually reveal anything at all. The reveal is done as part of the plot. The characters reveal it themselves. And I thought, well, what is is Stephen Fry on some kind of tender or something that he's going to come back?
I love how Paul has found the mystery within the mystery in every film. It's like, what's the mystery as to what?
Magicians always do that, you know.
Yeah, why is there 12 stab wounds and nobody has figured it out, etc.
I know. Well, it was. There was 12 stab wounds. 12 people, not in Gosford Park, mind you.
No.
And I did look up the wrong film, first of all. There's a Gosford Park, apparently, and there's a Gosforth Park. I don't know if it's a Goth 5th and a Goth 6th. I don't know, but I did get the right film at the end, and I did enjoy it as a period piece. Going back to thing as a murder mystery. Yeah, it was okay. It was all right. I'd put it second for credibility. If I could put these in an order, I'd probably put Murder on the Orient Express top, and then I'd put Gosford Park second, and then I'd put Clue, and then I'd put Knives at the bottom because I didn't really know what to make of it. But I did like this. It was very, very traditional, very well shot, as you say, and it had that nostalgic feel to it.
I think perfect time, though, is that we now need to know Chiara's ranking, because like she said, that it would be the reverse of Paul's. Like, we just need to know how different they are then.
I dare you to put Knives Out at the top. Go on. Above Agatha Christie. Go on, do it.
I'm going to, because this particular adaptation of Murder on the Orient Express was horrific. Poirot was terrible. So, yeah, I agree with you about number 3 and disagree about everything else, I think. On number 1 and 2 are definitely, for me, Knives Out and Gosford Park. Which one I'd put top depends on if I'm being accurate from what I think is probably a better overall film, or which one, is tied to childhood memories of going to the DVD rental store. So for pure nostalgia, in the spirit of the film, I have to put Gosford Park first, and then Knives Out, then Clue, and then that Murder on the Orient Express I don't think should ever have been made. I mean, I love ensemble films, but they should have just had a better Poirot.
Well, with Paul's problems about the detective's role in it and what their intention was, I think Craig would have the best answer for that, for what the film is going for, I think, isn't it?
Oh yeah, so this is also discussed in Just Right's essay that David mentioned earlier. But realistically, the film is mostly about the relationship between the upper classes and the working classes, right? So a lot of what we learn about the actual upper classes anyway is usually by conversations shared by the staff around them. So I think the answer to what is the detective doing there is that often he's trying to get to the heart of everything, but the upper class is just dismissing him to the point that they still look down on him, even though he's meant to have power over them. They just see their own status as above that. But he then, in and of itself, has power over his detective. So he's even ignoring their advice. So when it then comes to the fact that nothing actually comes of it for the consequences for the murderers, I should say, that's just another sign of like the aristocracy in those days just having ultimate power over the system, to the point that they've done this act and have just gotten away with it. So I think it was just going for that sort of message as well, and I think that's why they spent so much time like indulging in the luxury of these characters, even to the point that you have a rich character parading themselves as a valet who ends up doing some pretty horrific things to like some of the staff and some of the guests. Literally just abusing that power, and I think that's what the film mostly came down to for me. That's why I really like Gosford Park. I've been wanting to watch it in full for several years after I tried watching it a few years ago on Channel 4, and my house had a power cut 20 minutes in,
and then the murderer came out and stabbed Crane.
No, I agree with what you're saying, but I just didn't feel he moved the plot on at all. He wasn't there for a tremendous amount of time. He was there for probably about 10, 15 minutes of screen time on and off. So if they wanted to make the point, okay, they could have brought him in early and just potted him a bit. It just seemed as if he'd been chucked in as an afterthought on that section of the film, and he didn't serve any purpose.
It seemed almost like intentional then to me, because it almost was as if he was from like a Fry and Laurie kind of sketch, that he just came in and was kind of doing his, like you said, Stephen Fry kind of thing, because you can't really make it about the detective when the murder comes in so late, and the film seems very focused on always diverting your attention. So whereas you think, oh, I'll follow the detective, several times throughout the film they're like, oh, this important conversation's going on, but this like sidetracked to what the servant is currently putting on the plate, or let's look at this cute dog that everyone keeps like throwing around the place, which I'm glad that dog was all right by the end, by the way, because that dog got a lot of get that scraggy dog out of here. I was like, oh, poor dog.
I do like the foreshadowing towards the murder, though. So the fact that even though the murder does come in like quite late into the film, the fact that they build it up by just having that scene with like the missing knife being discussed by the staff, something that in any other context would be relatively innocent, but there like has the foreboding nature.
Yeah, so if there's any film that was literally going to be called Knives Out, then this would be...
it should have been this one. I did enjoy it. I wasn't on tenterhooks going, oh, who's going to be killed? When are they going to get killed? When are they going to get killed? I was swept up in the atmosphere of everything, anyway. So yeah, I did, I quite enjoyed it, but the policeman did stick out a little bit for me.
And the big cast of characters, I think, isn't it? Because there's so many people. You're just bouncing back and forth between like storyline to storyline to storyline. I think that's what keeps you engaged as well, isn't it? And yeah, it does have some bizarre moments, like I said, when the American director's just there on the phone talking about the details of his film as like a murder mystery is happening right behind him, kind of thing, which is a bit crazy. And yeah, I felt it kind of like, again, without too big a spoilers, but it kind of ended on just like a very somber, like gentle note as well. I was kind of like, oh, okay, it wasn't, a massive climactic ending. And I think possibly, that's what's interesting for the Movie Vault this week. So for those who don't know, like our section, which is the Movie Vault, which we discuss in every episode, we have a vault of movies which we want to preserve for all time, so that if anybody was to dig it up, say in 100 years' time, these would be the best depictions of film and movies, which can be bad and can be good. We're there to represent the different eras and different genres. And I think from the conversation we had so far, like I said, is that we've already mentioned that there are better versions of Murder on the Orient Express. I know that you said that was top of your list, Paul, but then like I said, there's other versions you haven't seen before. So, and then Knives Out is already in there. I think we've mentioned that as one of our top films from last year, so that's gone into there. So it really does come down to Clue and Gosford Park as to whether one of those films deserves to go into the Movie Vault. And yeah, it's an interesting one. I think just leave it up to you guys, I think.
How many films are we putting in the Movie Vault?
Well, like I said, usually it can be 2 to 3, and sometimes we might put none, and sometimes we might just put one. But, it's what you think deserves to go in, I think, really is, if they're representing the murder mystery genre. Like I said, I don't know, because, again, Gosford Park, I don't know, to me, whether that, like you said, to me, it was more of a period piece. It was a nice, big ensemble cast. But I didn't know if Michael Gambon's character was, say, in the example of Murder on the Orient Express, that character becomes the character of, I can't remember his name now, but, you know, Johnny Depp's character in this case, he becomes, you know, he makes a big impact within that first 10, 15 minutes, and they talk about him throughout, and everyone's got this vendetta against him. Whereas I didn't think that they quite made him enough of a villain or enough of a nuisance to make him, because I wasn't even sure who was going to die, kind of thing. So I'm not sure if that was a strong enough hook on his part to make it like, oh, who's going to kill him? Who was the person who had a vendetta against him, kind of thing.
For me, that's also what I liked as well, right? I also like the idea that for a while you're unsure of who's going to die, because all of these people in some way, again, are just causing grievances with people. But I think for like the character development aspect of the murder mystery, which is often what causes the biggest hook, as well as just finding out the mystery in and of itself, I think Gosford Park does do that quite effectively, to the point that I would argue it should go in.
Yeah, I think for me also, just quickly, is just that there wasn't enough element of like it could have been any of them, because there were so many people in that dinner scene and the piano that you already like counted half of them out. So I thought one of the strengths was that there was such a big cast. You thought, oh wow, it was a massive pool of people it could be, but you already knew it wasn't like 3/4 of them, especially because you saw it was like, well, obviously in the end, I won't spoil it too much, but you initially think that like, oh well, a certain gender is taken out of it because you see like the footsteps of one particular gender. That later doesn't become the case fully, but yeah, it kind of seemed unfortunate that you don't get that aspect of like, oh, you know, like it could have been any of them, and you know, like, and they all, like in Knives Out, they all could have had their motives, they all could have had the ways, oh, you were out of the room at that time, you were there, you know, that kind of aspect. Chiara?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a traditional murder mystery. So whether it should go in as an example of a murder mystery genre, I wouldn't say it's like the quintessential perfect whodunit. But what it is, I think, is it's quite a clever way of, like we said before, subverting the tropes. Like the clearly intentional way that you think the detective's going to be important, but then he's not. The fact that the murderee gets murdered twice. The kind of the overall view of it, like we discussed before, where they talk about the motive way before the murder happens, and then the murder itself only happens fairly late on. So, I mean, I really like this film, and I would put it in, but I don't think I would put it in labeling it as a perfect murder mystery. It's more an interesting subversion of the murder mystery trope for me.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, all the films today that we've discussed, apart from Murder on the Orient Express, because it's an adaptation of the most like famous murder mystery story there is, all the films we've discussed today are in way subversion of the murder mystery.
Well, even Murder on the Orient Express is, because it isn't one person as well. You know, it does subvert in that sense as well. So the fact that, yeah, I and like I said, because Knives Out inspired this is almost like you said, I think you convinced me there, Chiara, that it's an early Knives Out, that is subverting the expectation by early on. So, you know, so are we all agreed then the clue wouldn't go in?
It's a bit too stupid to go in.
Yeah. So you would agree with Gosford Park then, Paul?
If we're only putting one in, no,
Yeah.
I wouldn't. You know what I'm going to say, Chiara. I would personally put in as a snapshot, if you're looking at of time, right? So because I haven't seen any of the other adaptations of Agatha Christie. So if you're looking at a snapshot of time, say from 2017, on the year 2017, the best movie, the best mystery film, I would definitely, out of all of them, out of all the murder mysteries that I've seen last week, the 2017 murder mysteries that I've seen last week, I would say it's going to be Murder on the Orient Express.
But you still, you'd still say that you appreciate the inclusion of Gosford Park.
Yes,
yeah, that was one of the tops, wasn't it?
Gosford
Your
Park,
ranking, I think, was a Clue and Knives Out at the bottom, wasn't it? I think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't do Clue. You know, Gosford Park. I can appreciate that production values and everything. It was a nice film.
I'll be the judge in this situation then. I've heard the arguments, and I think the majority for it put on hammer is Gosford Park goes into the movie vault this week. Like I said, we'll maybe have another episode where all the versions of Murder on the Orient Express combat against each other, Paul.
I'm going to have to join a debating club on or something. I'm going away to join a debating club now.
Craig can link you up with that.
If you want to put in Murder on the Orient Express, you can, as a perfect example of how to ruin a film without casting.
Don't you dare. I knew you were going to say that.
We'll put in the 1974 one, even though, some of us may not have seen it, but maybe Paul will go watch it and compare the two afterwards.
I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to have to watch some of these other ones now.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chiara, is the best adaptation? I will go downstairs as soon as we finished and I've done the other bits. I shall go downstairs and I shall switch it on and I shall watch it. Which is the best adaptation of it?
I just think if you want to see what Poirot's character should have been, you need to go watch any of the David Suchet adaptations of any Agatha Christie, because that's a proper Poirot, and it's not quite the same thing as whatever rubbish Kenneth Branagh was doing in that film.
Yeah, he's not really Belgian, though,
We're in the endgame now.
It's so annoying.
Okay, endgame time. So we've been talking a lot about whodunits in this episode. So this time we're going to be having a Who David. So what I've set up is a murder mystery where one of us has killed David.
Oh.
So basically what will happen is I will give you clues to basically lead you along, and the first person to discover David's killer will be the winner of this game. But first we'll get initial thoughts. So Chiara, who do you think has killed David?
Probably you.
It's definitely great.
It was me. Okay, so
I could say that better.
yeah,
but,
yeah. Okay, so this game seems a bit pointless now.
That went well.
Yeah, I think we're going to do something else.
We're in the endgame now.
It's so annoying.
Okay, endgame time. So we've been discussing a lot of films about murder mysteries, but I think that a lot of other films are notorious for having deaths and murders. So we are going to be playing a game which is simply called Whodunnit. So this will be a fastest finger first. What will happen is I will give you a film title. I want you to buzz in if you can tell me the name of the character who is the killer in this film. Okay, what I will say is that some of these killers are not necessarily going to be traditional. So just to do a quick test, if I said to you, who is the killer in Titanic?
The ship.
It's not the ship.
The iceberg.
Yeah, the iceberg is correct in that situation. But so basically,
Right, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Does the weirdness of my idea now make a bit of sense?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I can, I wouldn't have argued that when I heard...
So are we ready?
Yep, here we go.
Okay, first first film, American Psycho. Chiara.
Do I have to give the actual name? It's the guy who does the stupid speech at the beginning, whose name I never remember.
Okay, his name would be useful because many people could have done a stupid speech.
But it's a really stupid speech. It's the only thing I remember about the film. I fell asleep 15 minutes in, straight after the stupid speech.
I haven't seen it, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay, what I'll do then is I can give half a point if somebody can tell me the actor. So basically, Chiara, can you tell me at least who?
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale is correct for half a mark. So, next film, The Lion King. Paul.
Scar.
Scar is correct. Next film, we have Psycho. Paul.
Norman Bates.
Norman Bates is correct. Next up, we have The Silence of the Lambs. That is Chiara.
Hannibal Lecter.
I can't accept because he is not necessarily the killer in Silence of the Lambs.
Oh.
Paul?
I was just going to say Hannibal Lecter's but I'm not. I'm going to say, oh, Lord, what was it? Oh, God, what was his name? I can't remember his name, so no.
It was Buffalo Bill.
Buffalo Bill. Of course it was, yeah.
He was the killer they were hunting for,
Yeah.
but they went to Hannibal Lecter for help.
Yeah.
Hannibal Lecter was also a killer, though, so I do think I should get half a point.
You know what? I will give you half a point because you identified a killer in the film.
Oh, are you ganging up here, you lot?
I've got to make up the ground that I'm losing.
Next up, we have Manhunter.
Martian.
I haven't seen it. Manhunter. No idea.
Nope.
I don't think I've even heard of it.
Okay,
Is
you're
it one of
gonna
those shark ones or something?
Nope, you're gonna hate yourselves. That one actually is Hannibal Lecter.
Oh wow.
It's the
No, that's not fair.
It's the so it's basically one of the books in the series. They made it into a film, but then when they cast Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter for Silence of the Lambs, they then remade it as Red Dragon.
Oh, if it had said Red Dragon, I'd have known.
Yeah, I mean that's also a different film. That's why I didn't say it.
Oh.
Okay, next up we have Kill Bill. Chiara?
Whatever the name of the character played by Uma Thurman is.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to go down the route of, can I have half a point? Because I don't.
Well, the thing is that character doesn't have a name, so if I wanted to, I could award a full point for that. But she does have a character name, which is the Bride. So Chiara will get half a point for that.
Yeah, but hold on. I didn't say anything, which really is the character's name. Nothing at all.
You also didn't buzz in, so I can't award you anything anyway. All right.
Okay.
Next film, Bambi. Paul.
The Ice.
The Ice? Was there ice in Bambi?
Doesn't it slip on the ice?
Winter is a common killer of animals.
Ice is a common killer of animals. There were loads of animals at the Titanic.
That was the correct answer, Titanic. I think you got them wrong way around.
Oh, yeah. I'm doing the Morecambe and Wise sketch where I'm answering all the questions in the wrong order.
Okay, so it's not ice. Chiara's now buzzed in.
Whatever the name of the character with the shotgun was that shot the mother.
You
don't know. Did he have names?
So I'm going to be a bit harsher on this one. So there was no name for that hunter, but he was specifically just a hunter. So I'm not sure if I can accept that guy with the shotgun.
I think in the context though that Paul didn't even guess that it was the mother who died, because you thought it was Bambi that died, was it? So I would say that.
You can't do that just because he's guilty. She must be innocent. You can't do that.
Okay, no points for that one. I mean, if that's how you feel about that one, I don't know what you're going to think about this one. King Kong. Paul.
The unnamed character in the plane with the machine gun.
So there is a reason I can't accept it, because it's not the explanation given in the film.
Oh.
What? Which version of the film? Is this the version of the film with Jack Black in it?
No, it's the original. It's the original. Like, I tell you what, if Chiara doesn't get the exact explanation, you will get half a point.
I have never seen any version of this film, so I have no opinion on what or who killed whoever dies in King
Okay,
Kong.
the correct answer was Beauty, because 'twas Beauty that killed the beast. I'd already
No, that's a Disney film, that is.
Oh!
You've got a different film. I got Titanic, you got the... Right, okay, yeah.
Classic line, guys. Classic line.
It was Beauty killed the beast. Yeah, all right, okay.
Okay, next film, The Shining.
Oh, where's me buzzer?
Paul.
Jack Torrance.
Yep, that is correct. Next up, we have Thelma and Louise. Paul.
Thelma and Louise. They both killed themselves. They drove off. They drove off the.
So both of them had an accelerator in the car, did they?
No, but they were encouraging each other.
Half a point.
I will give you half a point for identifying.
One of them could have jumped out. They could have gone, no, I'm not doing this. You carry on and do it by yourself.
Right.
No, they both wanted to do it.
Right, Paul, Paul, just to spoil, at this point, you've already won. Just to give Chiara a chance for a bonus point, can you tell me which of the two was driving the car?
Not a clue, not seen that one either.
Well, I mean, it's a 50-50 chance. Let's
go Louise, because that's better alliteratively.
Yep, Louise was driving the car. So, at the end of that game, which I'm pretty sure has made my guess the angriest I've ever seen them, Chiara got 2, Paul is the winner with 4.
Can I just say, Craig, I'm not normally this competitive. You bring out the mean in me.
It is funny as well because like the clip we often use from like previous endgames is Chiara saying like, oh, it's so annoying. And like, again, she's like the most calm, like placid person we have on the podcast. But again, something about the endgames with Chiara is like brings out this competitive nature in them all.
I have the worst luck with them.
You won the last one.
That's true, but that was musicals, so.
Well done, Paul. And yeah, thank you guys for joining us today. It's been lots of fun talking about murder mysteries and whodunits. And yeah, go check out our recommendations, especially Gosford Park. If you think that there's another film that should have gone into the movie vault, such as the 2017
version
Murder on the Orient
of
Express.
Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah. Message Paul and you can talk about it there. So guys, Chiara, we can catch you obviously on previous episodes if you want to check out when you were talking about musicals and the Eurovision movie, which, you know, who would have guessed that would have been one of the biggest films of the year, as we still didn't have any cinematic releases after that was out. And actually, what was it? Ya Ya Ding Dong became a massive hit. That was like on the radio for weeks after watching that.
Great tune.
And Paul, where can we catch yourself? I know you've got a project upcoming for Christmas.
Yeah, I'm very privileged actually, because I was contacted by a very esteemed gentleman from the North Pole, who tends to be very prevalent in children's thoughts throughout the world at this time of the year, and due to the pandemic and everything, he's not going to be able to get out and see as many children as he normally does in shopping centres and everything. So I don't know where he got my number from, but he contacted me and asked me if it was possible for me to facilitate him being able to talk to children all over the world via a streaming service. So, yeah, I'm working with Santa, and we're doing live video calls to children throughout the UK. Yeah, so that's very exciting.
Great. Where can we catch that? Is there a certain website or a certain social or anything like that?
It's www. It would help, wouldn't it? Yeah. I'd never make a marketer or a musketeer. www.santaspocket, that's SANTAS pocket, as in POCKET.co.uk. If you go there, you can sign up, and I've finally managed to work out how to integrate a calendar and PayPal with Zoom and a website and everything else without it all exploding. So, yes.
We've got our own Christmas festivities coming up as well. Craig, I'll go to you for that one.
So due to the scheduling of the podcast, one of our episodes for December will perfectly come out on Christmas Day. So we wanted to treat the fans at home with something special. So we're having a very special festive-themed endgame episode. So this will be the second one we've done after our successful episode from September. We'll be bringing back former guests in teams of 2, 3 of them again, where we'll be doing all of the usual chaotic games that we're used to, but with some more of a bit of a festive theme. We hope you enjoy it. If you have any ideas of things you'd like to see, please get in touch. I'm more than happy to work on ideas.
Yeah, Craig was Thanos in that one. This time he's going to be Father Christmas, dealing out the gifts, but maybe the coal as well for the people who don't get the right ones. So yeah, you can catch us guys on all our socials as well. Well Good Movies on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can catch us on our website, which is freshtakehub.com/wellgoodmovies. You can also catch a bunch of different articles and think pieces on there. We got plenty of reviews, a lot of Christmas stuff that's come out, including Jingle Jangle. You've got a look back at Toy Story, Anastasia, which is another animated musical, and an Alien Christmas, which is another weird Netflix original. So lots of fun stuff to go through on there. And yeah, hope to catch you guys soon. So please follow us, review us, share this episode wherever you can. And we look forward to chatting movies with you again in the future. Thank you again, Paul and Chiara. And we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Ah!
How do I leave this? There you go. Found it. Got it. See you later. Bye.